All right. So welcome to our last Community of Practice event specific to our RFP webinars. Super glad that you all could be here today. I'm just going to start with a couple of reminders. First of all, happy Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully this is the hardest part of your day, and once it's over, it'll just be clear sailings from here on out. But I'd like to start with our land acknowledgement. We recognize that the land acknowledgement that Minnesota had with the Dakota and other indigenous people in Minnesota was not recognized and not upheld by the U.S. and we did not uphold our end of the land treaties, and it is because of the continued displacement of indigenous peoples that allows the United States to claim Minnesota and allows us to exist here today. And our affirmation of commitment. As part of the ICI, Institute on Community Integration, we affirm our commitment to address systemic racism, ableism, and all other forms of inequity to ensure inclusive communities in the future. From here, I'm going to hand it off to Mary Hoff and Mindy Lingo. She'll do introductions, but yeah, thrilled to have them both here this week. So welcome, friends.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, sorry that I missed last week. I'm glad to be here this week for our final webinar. I just wanted to make a couple of broad brush statements, and then we'll go right to the main part of today's webinar with Mindy. We're really glad that you all have been able to join us through the series and taking the time to really learn about the Minnesota standards and the resources that are available for high quality inclusive higher education. We hope that the topics have been timely and the presenters have really provided you with quality information to help with your understanding of inclusive higher ed and preparing for the RFP. We wanted to just simply remind you that Katie and I are available through the Technical Assistance Center to continue to provide you assistance and support that you need leading up to the request for proposal. They're still anticipating that that's going to be released in April. And then once that's released, then we really enter into a sort of a quiet period until the applications have been reviewed and grants have been awarded. So we really encourage you to take advantage of the time between now and when that RFP is released, to tap into us as resources, as well as helping us connect you with other colleagues across the country to really help you prepare and increase your understanding in terms of inclusive higher ed. The other final thing that I just wanted to mention is that in the survey that we did, one of the topics that we haven't covered, and we are exploring the possibility of offering a webinar that's specific to grant writing. So if we're trying to get that put together so that it would be offered probably in March or clearly before the RFP is released. And we'll keep everybody informed on that. But several people asked for that, and we thought that might be another good resource, even though it's not directly connected to inclusive higher ed. It's a way that we can support you in preparing for the RFP and the grant application. And with that, again, we really appreciate your time and interest in inclusive higher ed. Today's session is going to be informal. We're going to turn it over to Mindy now, but please, feel free to ask questions along the way. We've kept the presentation short so that there's just time for a dialogue at the tail end of the webinar. So with that, I'd like to have Mindy go ahead and take it over.
All right, thank you for that introduction. So I am Mindy Lingo, and I am with Think College. I am actually based out of Oklahoma, and I helped develop a program at the University of Oklahoma. So I have a lot of background knowledge with program development, and I really wanted to share it with you guys because something near and dear to my heart. And it really is an exciting time for programming, and just you get to build it And that saying, build it and he will come, build it and they will come, I promise. And so I just wanted to jump in and answer some of the questions Mary wanted me to share with you guys, and then I'll follow up with an open question session for you. Oh, hold on. There we go. So again, I'm Mindy Lingo. I'm a training developer and technical assistance provider for Think College at the Institute for Community Inclusion out of UMass Boston. And we'll just get started with the questions. So one of the first questions that Mary asked me to answer was, how do you plan for your campus initiative and who was on the initial leadership and planning team? And I always encourage people, like, make sure you have a home, an academic home, or a campus organization, something like that, a home. We were based out of the College of Ed at the University of Oklahoma. I know other people continuing ed, human services, disability services. There's a lot of different places you can be housed at, but you really need that college home. So you have like a leadership guidance and all of that. And also it's really helpful to have access to the resources based out of that, not agency, but that home base where the program will be based out of. We started our initial planning with a small group within the College of Ed, and we had the dean's support. It was really important to access that the dean's support. So sometimes people just don't want to listen to you unless you appear to have some authority. And so that's why it's really important to gain the support of the administration within where you are housed. From there, we went on and we had to gain campus approval from the top down, presidents, vice presidents, deans, all of that. So we kind of worked from the top down. And then on that planning team, the VPs were mainly our vice presidents, like of admissions, academic, integrity, student affairs, those kind of things. So everybody came to that table to discuss and provide input. And it was really nice. The way they helped us is they allowed us to do a presentation to them and present what we were wanting to do. And then the discussions went from there. In a minute, I talk about how long it took, but it wasn't an extended process. But the way we did it really set the program up for success by meeting with all these people in the early stages of program development. And so you can see that our planning team, the College of Ed was the lead and everything, but then our team was made up of admissions, enrollment, housing, student affairs. All of those entities are really important to have at the table when you begin that initial phase of planning. Housing was something we didn't add at first, and we came back and realized how important it is to have housing on your team if you're going to be implementing a residential living component in your programming. How did you work across campus to include students with IDD in existing university services and systems? So I already explained our planning team, but not only did they help plan the program, they also were invested in the program after being part of the planning team, which really helped us when we were looking for employment options for students, trying to place them in internships around campus, and talking to their colleges as well. So like, let's say we wanted to place someone in allied health and some classes in the allied health. Well, having the dean from allied health at that planning meeting was really important, because then they had ownership in the planning process, and they also were able to convey that to the faculty within their colleges. It was really cool. We didn't have all the deans in the initial stages. We brought them in once we were approved. We brought in deans later for collaboration. And then our leads helped me. We met with like undergrad students and students affairs. We kind of picked those really key organizations on campus that we know had a lot of student involvement, and those organizations where the students are the ones you're seeing across campus all the time. They're the ones that are involved. They're the ones that know people. And they're the ones that get things done. So we brought them in and talked to them. They helped us review like what a typical college day looks like, the events, clubs, and organizations, all those different inclusive aspects of programming that you want your students to participate in. So be sure you have student representatives and student affairs, the people that are planning all the activities on that planning committee to help you design a program that is utilizing all of the resources there on campus and getting the students as involved as possible. We also initially followed like social media and newsletters, and we would follow those just so we could see what was going on, and it would trigger things like, oh, yeah, we didn't think about Welcome Week when we first started planning. We need to be sure we have Welcome Week and all of that included, and our students have access to that, because it's one of those things like, if you don't address it, there's just going to be an assumption that the students aren't involved in it. So you've got to make sure that you go through and you know all the things that are happening on the campus when you are working for student access. And peer mentors. While we didn't have peer mentors, the full organization, we set ours up as a student organization. We didn't have all of them participate until the students actually started, but we did hire one student to be like a student staff member, and I think we paid him $10 an hour for 10 hours a week during our planning phases, so that they were getting out there and helping us and talking with the different organizations and doing all of that. Sometimes college students don't really care when an old woman comes and talks to them about a program, but they do care when a young college student is coming and talking to him and telling him the benefits of it. So we did hire a peer mentor early on, just one to help facilitate all that. And then he ended up being our peer mentor president for the organization. And so question 3, what was it like to request and receive institutional approval for the program and for students to enroll at our institution, and how long did it take? Approval took a long time, honestly, because we didn't have the initial support to bring the program there, and then we had to go back and forth between all these people. It took us almost 2.5, 3 years in the initial phases, but we also had our president resign and a new president come in. So then we had to start everything back over. So that, I think with that wouldn't have happened, it would have taken us about 1.5 years, which was a little bit longer. I hear most programs, it takes them anywhere 6 months to a year to get things settled. Ours took a little bit longer, but once we got it settled, everything was approved, it moved really fast. We had our final approval May of 2019, and our program started in August of 2019. So we were hustling to get everything done. But it was really nice because part of our proposal included a lot of those decision makers on campus. So we could go to them and say, hey, we're starting. And they had already kind of had a plan and figured out how we were going to do that. And so that was really nice. And that was, I think, but a big benefit of having them on the planning team, our initial planning team. And my biggest advice to anybody is document, document, document. Anytime you are meeting with an organization, you are meeting with anybody on campus, document the meeting. If you need to produce MOUs, we have some examples on the Think College website, and those are memorandums of understanding, just so you have documented what's being said. And if you have staff turnover in any of the departments or even with yours, you have that information. It's like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We learned the hard way. Our housing person I'd worked with for 2 years left, and the person that came in, they did not do what we had done prior. And they didn't want to do what we'd done prior, and we didn't have an MOU, so it really hurt us. So it's really important to document and create MOUs, things like that, and have a paper trail. And then for program development, the CTP designation, and that's so students can apply for federal financial aid. Where did we have any barriers, and do you have any tips for collaborating with the financial aid office? Really, the biggest barrier was helping our financial aid office understand what we were wanting to do. They kind of thought we were crazy when we approached them because they'd never heard of it. And so at the time, there weren't a lot of the Think College resources on CTP yet. And so you guys are really lucky. There's so many resources to share with your financial aid office that explains it, and you don't have to go in and try to explain it to them. You can share it. I would suggest when you're setting up the meetings, download some of the documents off Think College and kind of add them to the meeting agenda so they can peruse them before the meeting and get an idea of what you're talking about. Have that
Mindy,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Well, I would also just say that there's actually the online modules. We've kind of talked about that at one of the earlier webinars, but that's a really good resource for whoever's leading the initiative on your campus to go through that so that you understand the process, and then also encourage your financial aid office. They maybe, it's not the whole thing, but there's probably bits and pieces in terms of their role where it would be good for them to see that training as well.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out, Mary. Those modules are great, and they walk you through step by step. And they're actually listed on our CTP topic page, which I've shared a QR code here for you. And there's also a little link there for you. But on the resource organizer I shared with Mary, there is a link to the CTP topic page, and all things CTP are on there. It even has access so you can it even has a link so you can access the federal financial aid website with specific language on CTP. We always get questions about that. And what I really like on the bottom of the CTP is a frequently asked questions. And so if you go to the bottom of that page, you can see sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. Many of our top questions that come into our help desk at Think College on CTP. So if you have that question, probably somebody else has. So look at those frequently asked questions. They provide a lot of guidance for CTP, but it wasn't that bad of a process. It really wasn't. The application, everything was well laid out. And since there was so much, we had an application to template, and we just used that, and it made it really easy. And then how was our program staffed? And did you increase staffing over time as enrollment increased? And how many students were enrolled? So we started with my first year. During all the planning, I was the main person. And then the first year I was the director of the program, and we had that one student hire, but they weren't full-time. They just did the 10 hours a week during the planning phase. But during the first year of implementation, they still did 10 hours a week, and we did the $10 an hour. And so it was me and them. And then we just started with 3 students. And I'm so thankful we did, because with one staff member, it was a lot. We did have GA support from our College of Education and social work, which was so nice. I mean, they provided a lot of tutoring for our students. They helped with our person-centered planning processes. It was really nice to have that GA support. And in turn, we were getting support, but we were also providing the services to these colleges that needed intern hours. So, it was a win-win for both of us. And I talked about the peer mentor lead there. And then we added staff each year over 4 years. So we added our coordinators. We had an independent living coordinator, which actually ended up being one of our social work interns that started as an intern, and they were so valuable into that independent living component that we brought him in, and we couldn't let him go. So we kept him, and she did phenomenal at independent living, community access, residential life, all of that. Then we hired an employment coordinator, and then an academic coordinator. We increased numbers by 5 the first year, 8 the second year, and now they're up to taking about 10 to 12 per cohort. So it's a 4-year program. So ideally, they should have about 40 students. Right now, they're a little bit lower than that, just to turnover, things like that. But on average, about 40 students. And it's really doable with the coordinators and then the director. And then if you use those resources that are already college, the GA support, it's really great to access if it's available.
Mindy, I have a question.
Yeah.
For when you were the director and in the planning phase, how was that organized in terms of, did you have like a carve out of some of your time that you were able to devote to the planning, or tell us what that looked like? Because some colleges, university, it's existing faculty or staff, and they do like a carve out for the planning phase. And then they either stay in that leadership role and then they hire additional people, or they become the director of it. What did that look like for you in Oklahoma?
Okay, I will say I was a little bit different. I was in my doc program at the time, and I was on a personal prep grant. And so I was writing my dissertation on this. So my whole time was dedicated to that. But like we were run out of the Zero Institute, which was part of the College of Ed. And so the director of the Zero Institute, she was since she was my advisor, was the main person, just checks and balances and all of that. But usually you're going to have someone like that or someone like faculty or something like Mary said. And it depends on what's available and what they're willing to do. I know it can take several hours a week, but I'm not for sure exactly what colleges and universities, there's like a set number or anything, Mary. I think it's just what the university is willing to give and what your other teaching load, all of that, research, all of that, how that plays into that.
Yeah, and we have the advantage in Minnesota because of the competitive grant funding, right? So that competitive grant can be utilized for that planning phase. So that will help cover the staff cost while you're doing the planning before students come on campus.
And it takes somebody a lot of hours. I mean, if you have funding for a full-time staff member to devote that time to it, it's even better. But some people just don't have that luxury. So, all right. And so, Mary, was there anything else in any of those questions you would like me to address before we move on to the satisfactory academic policy? All right. So our satisfactory academic progress examples, we have some policy examples here for you. You can use the QR code or the link. I'm actually going to click on, I'm going to click on and just go over them real quick with you. Don't get seasick as I do this, please. Or motion sickness, not seasickness, motion sickness. Okay. If you go to the Think College website, we provide examples of those for you, and they can be adapted. We wanted to provide you with a few examples. So our first one is our satisfactory academic policy. And this really does a great job of just guiding you and saying what exactly needs to be included in your, I'm just going to say SAP now because that's satisfactory academic progress, instead of saying it every single time. So what needs to be included in your SAP policy? We provide an example. What's great about our examples, a lot of times you can copy and paste them and just edit them to meet your needs. This gives you a great idea of what all needs to be included. It's that independent and community living, internships, work experiences, and university coursework. Satisfactory academic progress needs to be measured on anything that's a course program requirement. And that's really important for a lot of people to understand. Some people think it's just the academic portions of the programming, and it's not. It's all of it that's required for students. So we provide 2 examples for you within our resources. And you can see this one's a little bit longer. And you can check out the other one when you get a chance. I just want to be sure that we have time for everything. But there's two great examples, and we picked them because they were really good examples. We also have our, let me get over here. Let's do this. Make everything the same size. Here's our satisfactory academic rubric as well. And when you get into that, that is going to take those policies we just discussed and they create rubrics. And so you can go through and measure the student's SAP for each student, and it's already designed for you. You just kind of input it, or you can create your own. But sorry, my mouse is really sensitive today. Or you can just create your own. I really like those templates we provide in there. And we've made sure we paired it with one of the policies so you can see exactly how they align. And then I also wanted to make you aware that we have technical assistance support through Think College, where you can email us. We provide input on walking someone through the CTP process. We will review your CTP applications. We also will provide targeted technical assistance as you are developing your program. We'll walk you through it. We will have weekly meetings, monthly meetings, whatever you need to make sure you're getting what you need to develop your program. We have all of our resources, like I said, but I don't know if you've ever been on our Think College website, but there's a lot of information there. And sometimes it's really hard to get what you're needing. So reach out to us. We will share all of our information. We are not gatekeepers of anything. We really are here to support you. So I encourage you to utilize our technical assistance guidance. And then also should be this fall, we are releasing program development modules, which will guide someone through every step of program development and provide all the resources. And we also have some other program development guides as well on our website that are already released. If you would like those, you can email me. I'd be happy to share those. So are there any questions? It can be about any of this or anything program development wise.
Thanks, Mindy. I'll just add in that we work in collaboration with Mindy and the Think College team. So, and provide that technical assistance in terms of giving you that Minnesota lens. But Mindy's right there. The Think College is just this tremendous treasure trove of resources and information. And it's a lot easier to either have us or somebody from Think College help you locate, specifically what you're looking for.
And we also, I absolutely love our Facebook group. So we have a Think College Facebook group. It's not listed on here. This is just our general Think College Facebook, but we have a Think College Facebook professionals group. And it has over 600 people from different programs across the country, and they're so responsive to each other. We post like new resources that we've developed, things like that in there, but the members of this private group always also get in and ask questions like, do you have a resource on this? Or what about this? How do you handle this? And they are so responsive to each other. We encourage programs to utilize it all, which is also would be a real benefit during program development. And I have to say, on program development, it's a challenge, but it was such a neat experience, and it was a rewarding time in my career. I loved every aspect of it. There were days I was exhausted, but there's just so many wonderful things you're doing, and to meet with your community members and your college members, and to know what you're doing is providing such benefit to students and really getting out there and making people aware and connecting. And I got to interview news stations, all of that. Like, it was just a really fun time. So I really encourage you to apply for that grant. I would have loved to have funding to start.
I think the other thing that we should just mention is that not only in terms of the webinars and our conference that we host here in Minnesota, there's the State of the Art Conference, which is in October. That's the national conference in terms of inclusive higher ed. I think we've mentioned that before. Anyone who's applying for the grant, one of the requirements will be having at least one faculty or staff member attend that. It is so worth it in terms of the networking with colleagues from across the country, and then just the learning opportunity. It's a 2-day conference. Sometimes they have a pre-conference, but that's usually for state or regional alliances. So that's another way that you can take advantage of the professional development and the networking that's available.
And so I think, were there any questions to follow up or questions about SAP or anything like that?
Can I just ask a quick question about your leads?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you decide who your leads were from your group? Like what was the criteria for that? How did you set that up? That's what I'm
Like
Just-
who were part of our planning committee and leads across the campus?
So when you keep talking about your leads, and I guess my question would be like, so we have a planning committee, but how did you decide who was going to lead that
Okay.
group and what was the next step?
Right question. So when we met with our president first, and we had that, he wanted us to meet then, like he told us who he wanted us to meet with and kind of gain approval before he would grant the big approval. So he led that, but it was our vice president of admissions, because admissions is going to be greatly involved in the whole process. At first, it was not our vice president of student affairs, which also oversaw our housing, but we did add them eventually. It was then admissions, and then we also had the campus registrar on our committee, because the registrar handles so many of the technical aspects of enrollment, transcript, all of that. And then we also had the disability resource coordinator for the whole campus on our committee. So, this is just a piece of advice. We were just kind of felt like we were begging and pleading to get this program there. We agreed to some stuff that I wouldn't have, looking back now, I wouldn't have agreed to it. But our disability coordinator was just like, I can't handle another thing. You're going to have to handle all accommodations, modifications, everything, all faculty communication. We don't have the resources to do that. So they weren't involved in the equation after that. But we then fought later, like, hey, we do need you. You already have the communication components, all of that. We need some support. We will provide some staff to help you, but we need support throughout your office. So faculty, it's a uniform process for faculty for student accommodations. So the disability coordinator is really important. And then I would also say somebody, like I said earlier, from campus activities, there's a campus activities council we had that did a lot of planning, things like that. Those are the key people to bring in the initial phases that are going to be the big decision makers for the program.
And then Mindy, were you basically the facilitator, the coordinator, or the leading sort of the whole group,
Yes.
along with the faculty member that was your advisor?
Yes.
You guys were kind of the leaders of the whole team and helping bring everybody together based on the key parts of the campus community that needed to be involved.
Yes. And, when you're working with vice presidents, busy people, the provost, people like that, they're really busy. So we were kind of at their mercy when they could meet, and it might be we would meet this month and then they couldn't meet again for 6 weeks. So understand it just depends on scheduling, things like that. That's a lot of time. That's what took us a lot of time too, is just waiting for meetings to, because their schedules were so busy, and trying to get everyone together at once was really hard. So plan ahead for that if at all possible.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful. Christian is our accessibilities coordinator, so he's been here with me. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And we've had the blessing from our president, and our deans sits on our committee. So it's just like, how do we navigate that? That's what we're trying to figure out now, I think, is how is Christian going to handle all this when it, just kidding.
You're going to hire me 2 new staff is what you're going to do.
Well, that's our plan. That's our plan.
And it is a group effort. Like, I didn't know admissions. So reaching out and collaborating with that admissions person, we had just a great guy in admissions that said, hey, I'm going to create an alternative form for you guys that doesn't include ACT scores and all of that. And you can link it on your program website. You know, it's an alternative admissions form, but it was still within the university system and all of that. So just finding someone that's knowledgeable in the area you need access to.
Yeah. And speaking about admissions, we have a really good webinar scheduled for next week, March 4th, where we've got the admissions person and the director of the Inclusive Higher Ed Initiative at Millersville University. And they've actually integrated, so their admission process is the same as for any other student. And so they're going to share with us in terms of what that looks like on their campus. So I would encourage, anyone who's available to be able to attend that. We will record that, and it'll be posted on our website afterwards. So if you can't meet, I think Katie? It's the 4th, which I think is Tuesday, and it's at 6 to 7:15 is when we usually host those.
Yeah. And even if you can't come from all of it, even just the end of it, to be able to go and ask questions is super helpful. Typically, they're there, they want to be able to support. So yeah, if you have anyone from your admissions team who's interested, or just you yourself, great place. They're both so friendly and kind. I got to meet with them last week, so we're really looking forward to having them.
Yeah. And Millersville does really good work in terms of how they've established the initiative is just truly part of their campus community. So that's a really a good connection in terms of colleagues from across the country. The other thing that, Minnie, that I think you're the first person that I think has shared about how you involve the students on the campus, right, as part of that sort of that planning and that. And so that's a great idea. I'm trying to think of all the meetings and sessions that I've attended. I think that's the first time I've heard that, and that's brilliant, right? to help get that buy-in and the support of the student community on campus.
And you really want that that student that is so involved on campus, because they know everyone, they know everything, and it was a huge benefit for us. I'm really thankful that we thought of that at the time. And I will tell you guys, I also really think this is such a benefit for you to hear all the different perspectives, so you can kind of design and have an idea when you're going to talk to these officials on campus. Because when we went, we were like, we know we want to start this, but we don't know what it looks like. And so providing examples of what's already being done at other colleges is a huge asset for you guys. You can really showcase what other colleges are doing, because sometimes people just say that's not possible, but we know it is. So I'm really, now that y'all are getting this opportunity, I'm a little bit jealous that I didn't have it now. So, but it's so cool. But like I said, TA, reach out to us for anything you need, any questions that come up. No, Mary's a great resource for you guys, but also know that we're here to help as well.
Can I ask? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I just had one more question. So one of the things that we initially thought of was having a couple faculty members on our committee so that we could talk about faculty support and that coming from within than more so than us trying to drag people in. I don't know. And that we could talk about training and what that would look like and have, did you have faculty members that also sat on your committee, your planning committee when you started?
Other than our dean, no. But then once we brought in other deans, that was the big, once we were approved and able to bring in the other deans, that got the buy-in because our dean reached out to other deans and said, hey, we have this program. I think it's great. So he had to sell it to them. And once they had the buy-in, then we could say, hey, we've talked to Dean so-and-so and they support this and you're going to be having this student in your class. We did that communication. But I think if you brought in faculty in the beginning stages, it would be very beneficial and really to get their perspective on how to implement things on campus. What is, we always have our gold standard of everything, which I think it's great to really strive for. But sometimes we also need people that are going to say, hey, that's not going to work for this situation or this college or whatever, however things are set up, to get personal perspective so you know how to adapt things to meet the needs of your faculty as well. Because they're key players in the equation and you want to make sure you have their support and you have good communication and working well with them. And for you guys to have faculty that can talk to other faculty, that's huge. And help with trainings, things like that.
Yeah, clearly the Universal Design for Learning is going to be something, depending on how that's embraced on your campus, is a professional development opportunity. Person-centered planning is another. And that's one I know that Jonathan talked about that last week. And he mentioned that at EMSO, they use the Charting the Life course. That's actually the person-centered planning sort of framework or model that is being embraced in Minnesota by the Department of Ed and sort of through the K-12 system. And so Katie and I talked about that today that's maybe an opportunity that we have resources here in Minnesota, or maybe have Jonathan come back and do a webinar specifically on how they're utilizing Charting the Life course on their campus as part of their person-centered planning, because that's not necessarily an area that a lot of faculty or staff may be familiar with. And that is clearly it's part of how you do that planning and making sure that for each student that it's student-centered and based on what's important to them, right? In terms of the classes and the career that they want to pursue.
And we are getting ready to release a faculty guidebook, and it's a 3-part training series, and it should be released within the next 2 months. So once that is shared, I will share it with Mary so she can share it with you guys. And it really walks through all the aspects of how to work with faculty, how to get them engaged, buy-in, all of that. So it's going to be a great resource to share.
So Mary, is that Charting the Life course kind of like is it like an individualized plan for each student, or is it just, okay?
Yeah, it's an individual plan. It's based out of, I think it's University of Missouri, Kansas City is who developed it. I went through the training quite a few years ago. And my daughter has, we do person-centered planning. She does it on campus, as well as she's been doing person-centered planning since before she graduated from high school. And she has a really good relationship with the planner here in Minnesota that she's worked with. And so they update it on a regular basis. And that's sort of in addition to what they do on the college campus with the faculty and staff. So yeah, it is a framework. It's there's all sorts of different ways of doing it, but that's one. And I think it would make sense strategically, since it's being embraced and they're trying to implement sort of across the state, that we tap into that and those resources for the inclusive higher ed as well.
So does it parallel advising on campus, or does it encompass it is it a separate entity from regular?
Yeah, well, I say that it's I would say that it leads into the advising.
Okay.
I don't know how,
Sure.
Mindy, how you feel about that, but I mean, the person-centered planning is to just help the student identify what's important to them.
Okay.
And then they bring together, key people that they want to be a part of that. I think Jonathan talked about where they do one at the beginning of the first semester and they include the families. It's really important in terms of that on-ramping and off-ramping where the family's got a role to play in that. And then they continue, and each college or university maybe does it a little differently as to how frequently they update that. Some of that maybe is dictated by the student, right? As if there's significant things that are changing. I know in my daughter's case, we utilize it as a problem solving. So when the wheels were falling off her first year on campus, we utilize that as a way for her to problem solve. Okay, these are the challenges and what are the solutions? How can you work through that? And so it's broader than just sort of the academics is my point, right? Because it helps identify, some of the additional supports that the student might need, and it really individualizes it.
We at the University of Oklahoma, we did our person-centered planning the first of the year, involved parents and all that. And then we had weekly check-ins for students, especially our freshmen, where they would come talk to their contact person. And that's where we utilized graduate assistants, things like that. And we would check in on all those key components of the SAP policy, like their academics, how's it going? How's your campus involvement? And just following up so we could catch any issues that might be going on or things like that. And the meetings might be 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or some students, we knew that we needed a full hour. They were having some issues. But then the older they got, or if we had a student repeatedly coming in, everything's good, and we would do it in 5 minutes, we're like, okay, we can spread their weekly check-ins out. And by the time they were seniors, we just had quarterly check-ins with them. They had all gained those skills and really grew with it. So you can tailor it to meet your needs, but charting that life course really helps you develop that to inform what career choices they're taking, what classes are they enrolling in, advising, all of that. That's how you really personalize the experience for them.
Yeah. And some colleges or universities will do that first person-centered plan even before they arrive on campus that first semester. It just really depends on what seems to be the best fit for your university and the students that are going to be enrolled. My daughter, I think she's gone to 2 different universities, and in both cases, that first person-centered plan was done before she started taking classes on campus, like the summer before. And some do that where if there's like a freshman or a first year orientation, you can tag it on with that, what all the students are doing, but then, maybe you expand it to include that person-centered planning or have it separate. It really depends on what seems to make the most sense.
Yeah. We've started the summer orientations for different groups, and I think that's a really nice time to explore the campus in a not chaotic setting and get to meet a few people and have those key students that might be involved there. So yeah, that's a great idea.
And to have it be part of what's already happening. So you're not doing something separate, right? Because you're already doing it for other students. You're just including them in, and maybe the supports look different. Even the welcome week, like Mindy had suggested, at where Jean is now, they have cohorts that first year, and then those small groups that they group them in welcome week, and then they carry it through at least the first semester. It might be the whole academic year. And so that just creates this natural support and network, right? And connection socially, because that's a whole mix of students. That's not just students with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
That's great.
Question really quick. You've spoken a little bit to this, but I have 2 questions. The first one is, have you dealt with anyone within like your leadership group or anyone on campus that has been really opposed to the program starting or adding, pieces? And then the second question is, do you find yourself, like, do you have this small little training that you are having to provide all these different people who maybe have no idea what is this concept? I feel like this concept may be very foreign to some people.
Yeah.
And so how do we teach them and get them
Yeah.
on board?
We didn't encounter anybody that was adamant about the program not being there. It was mainly they were concerned about safety issues. And then they were also just how do we make it work? Those were the big questions. There wasn't anyone adamant about it. And once we addressed those, and then we did have some faculty that were very adamant not to have students in their class. And so that's one of those issues that, we would try to address it among ourselves and say, because a lot of times they felt like we were just placing students in their class just because we felt their class was easy. They felt like it was a dumping ground, that we had to explain to them, no, that's not the case. And going back to that person-centered planning, this student wants to be a personal trainer and work in the health field. That's why we think it's important for them to audit your course, on nutrition. And we don't expect them to walk away with 90% of the content. But if they're going to be a personal trainer and they have 30% content of what you're teaching in your class, we're really excited about that. So making them understand why the students are in their class, and the benefit for the student. And once we did that, that changed so many different perspectives. What was your other question? Sorry.
Did you find yourself having to train?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you create part of your planning year, you create resources, and we have those. We include that into our program development webinar, and I'm happy to cut and paste and share anything with you prior to that. But we create resources, and creating a program website within your college. Within your college website, if you have a program website, you can include those little trainings that people can access. You can share them. Think College has created there's already trainings out there on UDL that we've created trainings that people can access. We have public awareness campaign that just does like a 4-minute video that's phenomenal, explaining what inclusive post-secondary ed is, and it has students' perspective. So that's always something great to showcase too, because Mary, I'm not for sure, but I really think
we've actually used that liberally.
Yes.
So
And it paints the picture of
it's
what
more
it
than
was.
likely you've seen the video more than once if you've attended some of our events.
So, but yeah, creating those resources once, and then maybe I found I had a PowerPoint, a big inclusive. I had everything in a PowerPoint that when I would have to go speak to housing, or I'd have to go, speak to student groups, student organizations, or whatever, I could pull the big train and just adapt little pieces and cut and paste. So you are doing some training in the initial phases, but being smart about it, reusing stuff, creating one-pagers, things like that, and then providing access online. Because sometimes you're going to get a million emails. What is this program? What's it about? I always got an email. Explain this to me. Explain what aspects are you wanting? Because there's so much. So just having those basic informational trainings or resources and then building out from there.
Thank you.
I'll also just add in terms of, we've had experience here in Minnesota where one of the 4-year universities, we had a faculty member that was committed to expand enrollment to include students with intellectual disabilities on their campus. And she did just a whole lot of work, just poured her heart and soul into it, and really was getting it all organized, getting buy-in across the campus. And she did run into the university leadership said no. And one of the biggest, there were particular members of the leadership that were not comfortable, in particular, the housing and the whole issue centered around safety, which isn't really any different than any other student. I mean, you got to keep reminding them that, who who screens all of the students in terms of their ability to quote unquote be safe right on campus and follow policies and procedures and stuff like that. And it was really unfortunate because she had a lot of buy-in across the campus, and then she ran into one or two in the leadership that just stopped her dead. And so, you know, the thought was, well, just wait, leadership will change and try again.
And I also think getting buy-in, it helps to have people in your community, maybe that their child would access that program. Somebody that has some clout or a big time alum, those kind of things, those are really those representatives are important to have. And you can always add them onto your advising group, those kind of things, or even have them reach out on behalf of the program to people and say, I think this is important. So making those connections within your community is huge. And once our program was established, we got really smart and learned to bring students with us to meetings, because students could tell their accounts, and really it wasn't about us then. It was about them asking for this resource, and a few people told them no, but not too often, because they had really good reasons and could explain it, and you could see the benefit right there.
Yeah, students are compelling.
Yeah.
And we also tap into that when we like when we're testifying at the state legislature. Nobody can say it better, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what it is that they're trying to do, what they would like to do in terms of the opportunity to go to college and why. Yeah, that's really really important. That's part of why if you go to our website, not only because we want to keep our work student-centered, but also we want that our website, the homepage, to be a wall of students. Minnesota students at today are either going to college or want to go to college, as a way of saying there's an opportunity here, right? To help students have access and to be able to pursue that post-secondary education like any other student in the state.
I also, from my experience in getting things kind of pushed through at a university level, having students on campus that are disabled or non-disabled, we really wanted some change in the DRC I'd worked in, and we had a bunch of students step up from like the Student Disability Club and come in front of the Board of Regents, and they're like, and this is after the DRC had gone before them and said, like, you need this, this, and this. The students showed up. They're like, oh, no problem. Like, you need that, it's yours. After we had sent how many of us being like, this is really important. So having, those students on campus saying like, we want these students, we want this population here, is super powerful and impactful also.
Agreed. All right. Well, I think we're running out of time, but I'll let Mary close it out, but I've included my email and everything. So please feel free to reach out anytime. I promise we are open to any question. If we don't have the answer, we will try to find it for you. So feel free to reach out at any time to us. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Thank you, Mindy. We really appreciate you, and we appreciate the partnership with Think College. We operate the same way in terms of we're here to support you in terms of the inclusive higher ed and the work that you're trying to do on your campuses. So please don't hesitate. We want you to be successful. We want to expand these options across the state. So thank you for your time and commitment.